Good morning. My name is Chris House. I am president of House Solutions. House Solutions is a technology firm that specializes in technology consulting, training, cybersecurity, tech staffing, hardware and software purchases. I am a NAMC member and NAMC board secretary. I will be your MC for today's event. We are so excited that you have joined us for this inaugural Level Up session. I want to thank our sponsors, Cleveland Cavaliers and Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, for hosting us today and providing technical assistance for this session. What is NAMC? NAMC stands for National Association of Minority Contractors. NAMC was founded in Oakland, California in 1969 by Ray Dones and Joseph DeBreau. NAMC is the oldest minority construction trade association in the United States. Through a network of 21 local chapters and in collaboration with strategic and corporate partnerships, NAMC assists members with building capacity by providing access to opportunity, advocacy, and contractor development training. Slide 3, please. Prior to NAMC's inception, no black or brown business owner had ever received an SBA loan and virtually no contracts. Political leaders who supported NAMC and others contributed to the formation of the Congressional Black Caucus, and that group led the effort to create the Minority Business Development Agency, MBDA. In addition, the SBA also developed the 8A program to support minorities. What a rich history. NAMC remains an active resource to congressional members and the Senate, providing input on various issues and legislation that affects construction and small business administration programs. Education and training, coupled with political advocacy, help achieve NAMC's goals of access to the arena of increasing access to local, state, and federal projects. Systemic racism and discriminatory practices are still a key issue in the construction industry. Okay, locally, NAMC Northern Ohio Chapter. NAMC Northern Ohio Chapter, the National Association of Minority Contractors, Northern Ohio, is a 501c3. We formed that and became a chapter on June 25th, 2019. NAMC NOC covers the northern part of the state of Ohio, including Toledo, Cleveland, Akron, Canton, Youngstown, and Warren, just to name a few. Our main objective is to bring diversity and inclusion to the forefront of construction in Northern Ohio. Our group was not organized to eliminate or duplicate any other programs that support equity, rather to fill the gap as the lead based on firsthand experience. Our goal is to work in unison with others who support diversity and inclusion efforts. We are able to speak firsthand about the issues that prevent minority businesses from being sustainable. NAMC Northern Ohio Chapter wants to inform diversity outreach programs that often fall short of real, substantial economic participation in construction projects. Whether our membership is union or non-union contractors, commercial or residential, large or small, the common denominator of being minority contractors is that we know the blight of biases, implicit and explicit, that we experience daily. NAMC Northern Ohio's chapter's mission is to provide our members access, information, networking, and contracting, and resource opportunities, advocacy, legislative impact, and contractor readiness, education, training, capacity building, mentorship, and growth through collaborations with our major corporate, community, and public partners. Next slide. NAMC committees. NAMC Northern Ohio chapter has 8 committees that members are able to join. They are programs, finance, membership, education, major partners, advocacy, marketing, and then tradesmen. NAMC Northern Ohio chapter has created and has started eliminating a set of pipeline strategies and programs to not only educate and expose young people to the construction industry, as well as continuing to build the capacity of existing and new construction companies, both union and non-union shops, and industry services that have them contract ready. The purpose of these education strategies is to build the interest and foundational skills that young people will be eligible for the next level of skill development. Existing and new business owners will further build their capacity, ensuring that they are ready to partner on larger jobs, go after smaller jobs on their own, and do a great job. It's training wheels. NAMC Northern Ohio chapter will work with key corporate sponsors and community partners to fund and implement education and training programs. Volunteers will be recruited from the community and several industry sectors. NAMC Northern Ohio chapter will work with key nonprofit organizations, schools, trade associations, and NAMC Northern Ohio chapter members, as well as utilizing social media to recruit participants for the 4 programs. NAMC Northern Ohio chapter's pipeline begins with educating and exposing middle school girls to the construction world through Rosie's Girls. Rosie's Girls is a partnership with Friendly Inn Settlement House. Rosie Girls expands the girls 6 years old through 8th grade, a sense of possibilities through hands-on exploration and learning of skills relevant to the building and welding trades. Next program is NAMC's next program and strategy is CREW. CREW stands for Construction Readiness, Empowering Equitable Workforce, in partnerships with YOU, that's Youth Opportunities Unlimited. CREW is a 3-phase, 6-week program that develops young people of color ages 18 through 24 years old to have a strong foundational and understanding of construction to prepare them for a pre-apprentice program. NAMC Northern Ohio chapter and the Real Black Friday. Flip This Business is a program that helps minority-owned businesses build capacity regarding their business knowledge and upgrade their facility within 6 weeks. This program is a collaboration between NAMC Northern Ohio chapter, the Real Black Friday, Urban League of Greater Cleveland, and First Energy. The last program in our pipeline is the NAMC Northern Ohio chapter capacity building, training, and educational program that you see before you today, and that is called Level Up. Level Up is, the goal of Level Up is to build capacity for NAMC Northern Ohio chapter's members as part of their membership benefit. It will be featured the 3rd Thursday of every month and include, but not limited to, advocacy, education, and procurement. Next slide, please. NAMC Northern Ohio chapter corporate partners. We are proud to present our corporate partners for this year, and it is Whiting Turner, it is Gilbane, and Metro Health Hospitals. NAMC Northern Ohio chapter will engage our corporate partners and other community organizations to create a calendar of quarterly trainings, networking for 2021. So there are plenty of opportunities for corporate partners to participate and join us. NAMC membership. Next slide, please. Okay, NAMC membership, we have 3 types of memberships. Contractor memberships, associate memberships, and individual memberships. There is a place for you in NAMC. We will welcome you with open arms. I would like to, right now, introduce the board. Right here.
Hi, I'm Kyle Jones. I'm with KBJ Construction. I joined NAMC because it just made sense. We had an opportunity to join a national organization that could represent us as minority contractors and that allow us to get a seat at the table without, usually we get crumbs. This allowed us to get a whole piece of the pie. So that's why I joined NAMC.
Good afternoon. My name is Mel Tree Sharp. I am managing partner of CLE Consulting Firm. We are an accounting, bookkeeping, tax, payroll, and business consulting firm right here, conveniently located downtown in Cleveland. For me, it was a no-brainer joining NAMC. I continue to be saddened by the systemic racism and the discriminatory practices that plague our community and devastate our community. So being connected to an organization and being able to collaboratively break down these barriers was right up my alley. So there's a lot of work to be done, and NAMC is up for the challenge. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm John Todd with JWTNA. I'm a general contractor, and we also specialize in carpentry. The reason why I joined NAMC was for advocacy. We've been out there for a long time, getting excluded on these projects, and so anytime you get a group of minority contractors pulling together to fight for the same cause, not only for the day, for our next generation coming through, was very important. So that was one of the main reasons I joined NAMC.
Thank you. Thanks, John. Hello, my name is Shakori Davis, president of Next Generation Construction. I am a general contractor, also a general trades contractor. My company specializes in healthcare. As you know, Cleveland has one of the most efficient healthcare industries in the country. One of the reasons why I joined NAMC was because it's an opportunity to have a grassroots approach to help strengthen a lot of newer coming general contractors or specialty contractors. I'm excited about what we're doing over here, and I look forward to gaining a lot more members. So, thank you.
Hello, I'm Arian Kirkpatrick, the president of the AKA team, and I am also the president of NAMC. It was important for me to bring NAMC to my partners because it's important for our voice to be heard. There was a clothing line years ago, for us, by us, and that's our unspoken motto. When we're able to speak our voice and tell the experiences that we have as minority contractors, we're better fit to uplift the things that we need to do to be successful. I'm not going to speak a lot because I'm going to be on a panel, and I think right now I am getting ready to turn it over to Kevin Clayton, or am I turning it back to you, Chris? I never know what to do. Here you go.
All right, thank you, Arian. And like I said, my name is Chris House again, and I am board secretary of NAMC Northern Ohio chapter. And I think the reason why I participated in NAMC Northern Ohio chapter is, I actually go back to when I was a kid, East Cleveland, and I really wanted to make a difference in technology. And I wanted technology to be available to everyone, and it should. And I think we know that now, especially during the pandemic. And so NAMC Northern Ohio chapter offers House Solutions a chance to give back to the community and really add to the workforce development that's going on in Northern Ohio. Okay, so I will continue here. And I really just want to let everyone know that you too can join NAMC and to get information on jobs, training, advocacy positions that impact minority businesses and all businesses in all of America. Please take a picture of this slide if you're not a member. So let's get to the meat of the program. You are in for a treat, a real treat. I would like to introduce Frank Wiley, anchor at WEWS in Cleveland, Ohio, a multiple Emmy Award-winning journalist who has a passion for storytelling and building relationships. Frank has also worked in Atlanta at CBS 46 as the morning anchor. In his new role, Kevin Clayton. And right now, I'd like to hand it over to Frank Wiley. All right, Frank.
Thank you so much for that. I don't know if I'm supposed to, how close I can get to get the microphone right in this day and age. Thank you so much for that introduction. And thanks for inviting me to be a part of this conversation. As we know, it is very important, and it's our responsibility to keep this conversation going. So with that, we will jump right into it. I want to take this time to introduce Kevin Clayton as Vice President of Diversity, Inclusion, and Engagement. Now, that is a newly created position for all organizational properties, including the Cavaliers, the Monsters, the Canton Charge, the Gladiators, the Cavs Legion, and Quicken Loans Arena. Now, in this new role, Kevin will lead the strategy program, planning, and execution for diversity and inclusion initiatives to strengthen and expand the organization's efforts to maintain a robust, welcoming, and inclusive workplace culture. We all know how important that is. He will also closely work with the organization's senior leadership group and serve as a mentor promoting additional educational programs and perspectives on the importance and value of diversity inclusion as well throughout the organization. So, Kevin Clayton.
Yeah, thank you, Frank.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I get the honor of having a conversation with a longtime friend, as well as, for me, just a hero and mentor in small business, and as a former kind of business owner myself. So let me just tell you who that is. That's Hilton Smith, who is retired Senior Vice President for National Community Affairs for Turner Construction. In the role, Smith is, in his previous role, he was responsible for managing the company's corporate and national community affairs, minority and women-owned business enterprise program, equal opportunity and educational programs. He was involved in awarding over 50,000 contracts to minority and women businesses. He coordinated business development and strategic marketing programs with senior executive officers within the company. Smith actively led Turner's efforts in awarding over $22 billion to thousands of minority and women-owned business enterprises. Hilton is also a board member emeritus of National Board of NAMC and past president of the Cleveland chapter of the NAACP. So the ad lib that I wanted to share is that in a previous life that I had, used to work for Russell Athletic and Spalding and what have you. And we sponsored historically black colleges all over the country. And I would always see this one person at every classic game with HBCUs. And Hilton and I began to develop a relationship. And what I noticed that he was always on the forefront of what can we do to promote black-owned businesses at the classics, what can we do to connect with the black community in ways that maybe we had not done before. And literally all across the country, let it be the Atlanta Football Classic or what have you. So Hilton, welcome. It is an absolute honor to be able to have this conversation with you.
Kevin, it's my pleasure to be with you.
Absolutely. So hey, let's just jump right into it, okay? The construction field, and you're going back years when maybe we weren't even allowed in that field. How did you get involved in the construction field?
Kevin, I first got involved in the city of Cleveland. I was working as chief administrator of the Division of Health for the city of Cleveland, in charge of all the health centers, which were about 20 health centers that the city had. And we began to do construction work, and that was under the administration of Mayor Carl B. Stokes. And way back then, Mayor Stokes says, I want some black contractors to be involved in some of this particular work. He says, because I only see black contractors doing sidewalks and service stations, pavement, and I want to see them in the real heavy part of this industry called construction. And so we went to work, and that was back in 1968 and 69. And so we came up with the idea of having a construction management program, whereby we would begin to offer training for minority businesses so that they may be able to elevate their business levels up to the level of major construction in town. And so we cut a deal with Case Western Reserve University to have the program there. And we went back and gave it to Mayor Stokes, and he says, well, if you can get 12 contractors to attend a class to learn all about constructions of minority ethnicity, then we will deem it a success. Well, we started the program. We had 53 participants.
Wow.
And 53 graduated from the program. And the rest is history for that construction management program. We did it here with the city of Cleveland. Then I went over to Turner Construction Company and carried it on throughout 107 cities in the United States.
So let's talk a little bit about that, the connecting point between when you left the city and went to Turner, because I'm sure it was groundbreaking at that point to even have a focus on women and minority-owned businesses. So walk us through kind of that pathway as to how you were able to navigate through Turner to then being recognized as being one of the best in this field.
Well, Howard Turner, who was then the chairman of Turner, came to Cleveland. And he says, Hilton, I want to meet with Mayor Stokes. And we set up the meeting with the mayor. And we went to see him, and Mr. Turner said to the mayor, he says, I want to do something that's never been done in this country for small businesses. And since you are the first mayor of a major city, I want to start it here. And the mayor was kind of blown away about that, because to have the leader of the #1 construction company in the country, and also owning the country because his name was Turner, he says, let's see what we can do. And so we had a project in Huff called the Martin Luther King Plaza. And Mr. Turner told me, he says, Hilton, it's your job to start something that's never been done in this country before. And I said, you give me the tools and I'll run with it. And so, to make a long story short, we developed a joint venture with Ozanne Construction Company, the first joint venture project with a minority and majority firm in this country. Wow. And we built the Martin Luther King Plaza together, and we had a program saying that 20% of that work would go to minority businesses. And we did about 30% at that particular time. And so we took it from there. And so the next big project was the Oakland Redevelopment Program in Oakland, California. And that's when I met the founder of NAMC, Ray Dones. We went out to see him, and Ray said, do you really think that a majority firm will work with my firm? I said, let's go to work. And we did that project together and several projects after that in Oakland and in San Francisco. And so that was the beginning of this whole thing. And the construction management training program, which started in Cleveland. By the way, we did it here for about 5 years before we took it anywhere else in Ohio, because nobody else really wanted it. But after they saw what we began to do in Cleveland and the completion of that Martin Luther King program, project, then Columbus said, bring it here. And so we took it to Columbus, and the first job that we did there was the Borden's job in Columbus, Ohio, downtown Columbus. And the Wolf family, who owned the Columbus Dispatch newspaper, says, we want the same thing to happen in Columbus that happened in Cleveland. And so we found Mr. Smoot and the Smoot Company. And so we began to do joint ventures with the Smoot Company, and then it spread it everywhere. It became a nationally known program, and we're thankful for that.
All right, and that was all while being at Turner, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so you mentioned that your first kind of connecting point with NAMC was out in Oakland. So you then got very involved with them.
Yes.
How'd that happen and why?
Well, when Ray Dawes and I became friends, he says, I would like to have you to be a part of our advisory board. And so I thought that would be just meeting with them once or twice a year. He said, no, we need you here about once a month. And so that time I was working out of Cleveland. I had not moved to New York yet. And so we would meet with Ray, and then he said, we'll make it easy for you. We'll start meeting in Washington because we want to develop a minority business program throughout the government. And that was Mr. Doan's pride and joy, to start the MBDA program in D.C., which still stands with the government. And so we would meet, and we would do things together. And what he always said to me, he says, Hilton, I want to develop real contractors, not front contractors. He says, because a front contractor will only prostitute this industry. And he said, and those are his exact words. And he says, we've got to develop contractors that can stand on their own, learn the business, and be ready to move forward and onward and upward. And that's how we started.
Wow, so real impact, real impact. What's some of the other impacts of NAMC that you've seen over the years? What kind of impact in the industry?
The growth. One of the things we ask NAMC to do is to form chapters. And at that time, when I started working with them, there were about 7 chapters. And we said, you can't do business if you don't know the people that run your cities. So let's start with the mayor of every city. Let the mayor have those letters, NAMC, rolled off his or her mouth every day. And so we began to meet with various mayors, and we began to meet with the Congressional Black Caucus. That was started just a few years after NAMC. And we began to work with the late Congressman Stokes here, and Congressman Stokes knew the program because he was with it here in Cleveland. And so that's how we really expanded the program. And then we had to move it forward. We say, now, the mayor of any city that we go to must know who we are and must have some legislation on the books for the utilization of minority businesses. And once we did that, we got to know who will be doing the construction. So we got to know who the developers are and the major companies like a Sherwin-Williams. Who has those companies? And we began to develop that type of thing, and we said we don't want to meet with some executive assistant. We want to meet with the heads of all these corporations in this country. And one of the highlights of my career was to work with Dick Parsons. And we built their headquarters on Columbus Circle in New York City, Time Warner. And he was a black man that was ready for this. And he simply told us, you got to make my company look good. And so we had the blessings of him. And then we began to work with other top executives. Jamie Dimon from Chase Manhattan and others who brought into the program. And so we had to keep the heads of the corporations involved, because we know where the program would go if everything was left to somebody down the road down to another level in the companies. And one of the things you have to do with minority businesses is that you have to make it real and make it solid as a part of a company, because a lot of companies, basically what they wanted to do was, okay, we'll start a program and we'll get a couple of companies that that we can just use their names and give them a little bit of money. And it's kind of like one brother told me once. He said, I asked him, how was he doing? He said, I'm doing very well, Hilton. I said, how you doing? He said, I'm making some money now and don't even have to be on the job. He didn't know that he was being used. And he told me how much he was making. I said, well, first of all, you're not making enough money to be used. I said, but you go back and tell those folk with a contract that you want so many people on that job to work every day. You want a superintendent on that job. And let's see how it will work. Well, he went back to his company and told them that. They wanted to put him off. But they couldn't do that because guess who had the contract? Turner.
Okay.
And so we got that started, and so we made that young man a real contractor. And he did not know it, and he's dead now, but he used to thank me years later about setting him straight because he thought he was doing something well, and he was not. And so we are hoping that that does not happen today. Probably it is somewhere, but we certainly don't want it to happen in Cleveland.
Well, so you've just been an amazing influencer and steward throughout your time when you were at Turner and also with NAMC. How have you now continued to influence minority businesses, and how do you continue to be a good steward over the work?
Well, Kevin, I retired in 2016, and some folk called me and asked me if I would come to work for them. I said, no, I'm not going to work anymore. I did that for 44 years. And I just got a call last week. And then I just give advice whenever possible and whenever it's good. And a lot of times I will just throw something out to businesses that call me because I don't volunteer my services because I don't want anybody to say that Hilton Smith said this or Hilton Smith said that. I just want to give them something to think about and let them figure things out themselves. And that's the way I pretty much did it all throughout my career. I did not want to run anybody's business. I did not want to have my name associated with what they're doing. They had to make their own way because I was not going to be there all the time.
So we have a number of those businesses who probably would want to call you watching this. Can you provide 3, 4, 5 kind of perspectives or just tips to businesses, small or just black-owned businesses, as to what kind of things should they be doing? What kind of tips can you provide them for success?
Kevin, first and foremost, you got to learn before you earn. Construction is a tough business, and you have to know what you're doing, know what you're talking about, join organizations that can help you to expand the knowledge of your company, and try, if at all possible and feasible, to have a good banking relationship. And a good banking relationship starts off with your personal banking relationship with a bank, because that's how you can have someone in that banking system to help you to move to higher heights.
You're talking about go online and do banking? Because that's what folks do now.
You got to have some face-to-face too. Online is one thing, but I'm from the old school. You got to have some face-to-face.
Personal relationships.
Personal relationships. People do business with people they know. Therefore, you got to know people.
Okay.
That's one. Number 2 is develop a good staff. Now, developing a good staff, let me say this, is not hiring your brother-in-law if somebody tells you in the family that you need to hire him when you know he's not right for the job, or a cousin. You got to go outside of the range of family to get people that know the business and that can help you earn. And that's not saying don't hire anybody out of the family, but you got to know if the family's right. So look for good, competent staff. That's number 2. Number 3, you must eat and sleep your business. When I was working, I'd think all night long. And if something would pop in my head, I would go to my the stand by my bed and write something down before I forget it. And so you got to always be thinking. You got to go to meetings. And you got to go to meetings and not be late, because the people that you might be meeting with, if the meeting starts at 7, they've probably been there since 6. And they set the tone. So when the coffee is poured, you want to have one of the first cups of coffee, because you don't want to miss a thing. And during that time, you got to take notes on the business, take notes on the various angles of the business. And if you do that, you can let people know that you're really interested. Then the next one would be get a good accountant, get an excellent accountant that you can trust. Get yourself a good lawyer that can read your contracts. We used to have a gentleman that worked for us that used to teach contract law to our construction management programs. And his subject was always a question: what does your paper say? And the reason he would say that is that if you don't know the contract, you're not going to do very well. So you've got to know your contract. And if you don't know the contract, then you're out in the wild blue yonder. You've got to be able to read your contract, discuss it with your lawyer before you sign it. And one of the things that was the Achilles heel of minority businesses was that they would be so glad to get a job with somebody on a Sherwin-Williams that they would say they're just sign it, being happy to be there. And you might be signing your death knell. And so you want to know what's in your contract, and know what the paper says. If you're on the job and somebody says, you're doing a fine job, why don't you go over there and knock that out for me? You think you're happy. Oh, they like me. You know what you're supposed to say? I'm glad you want me to do it. I'll have a number for you tomorrow.
So the words, according to Hilton Smith, learn before you earn. Make sure you hire a qualified, competent staff, not just relatives. Mm-hmm. And I love the one around when the first cup of coffee is poured, make sure you're standing right there with your cup and your mug.
That's right.
Right? Hire a good accountant and have great legal advice.
Right.
All right.
Right.
What's the final comment as we wrap up that you'd like to share with our audience?
Be in this game to win. Be in this game to win. And in order to win, you got to win every day. You've got to learn a lesson every day. When the faults come or the downside comes, you make it the upside and don't stop. Just keep on moving. Don't stop. The early motto of the National Association of Minority Contractors was this: adversity can engulf the individual, but not the group. So have your group and make absolutely sure that adversity is nowhere around. If there is some adversity, discuss it and move on. And keep a lot of the information that you learn in business within the organization. But learn while you earn.
Wow. Hilton, you are a living legend. I thank you for those words. And let me just pass this back over to Frank. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. It's good to be with you.
Absolutely.
All right.
My goodness, thank you so much for that. That was amazing, gentlemen. Wow, words of wisdom and words to live by there. And we want to keep this moving ahead with an introduction of NAMC's Executive Director, Lisa Bottoms. Now, you all should know that Lisa has a strong background in building capacity for nonprofits, program design, strategic planning, coaching, and training. And Lisa is going to review the executive order for us. So, Lisa Bottoms.
Thank you, Frank. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lisa Bottoms, and I'm the Executive Director of NAMC. And for those of you that don't have a clear idea or understanding of the county's disparity study, we're going to talk about it in two ways, the problems and then the remedies. So in 2014, Cuyahoga County conducted a disparity study to discover or to determine whether discrimination existed in the county in awarding contracts to minority and women-owned businesses. The disparity study revealed a long-standing discrimination did exist. Fast forward to 2016, the county then set aspirational goals for minority and women-owned businesses and required good faith efforts to reach these goals. Additionally, they set performance bonds for smaller jobs under $250,000. These bonds were waived, and the County Small Business Enterprise, SBE, set-aside program for qualified small businesses was implemented. The county SBE set-aside program allowed for reserving some bids, RFPs, RFQs, and solely for our SBEs. The disparity outcomes and remediations, however, were poor despite the good efforts of the county to implement race and gender neutral programs. In 2020, Griffith and Strong PC conducted the Cuyahoga County Disparity Study that was released on November 5th, 2020. The disparity study looked at Cuyahoga County's purchasing in the major procurement categories of construction, architecture, and engineering, professional services, other services, and goods and supplies for the period from January 1st, 2014 through December 31st, 2018. The disparity study team members calculated the percentage of available qualified minority and women business enterprises willing and able to provide goods or services to the county in each major procurement category and compared that to the percentage of dollars awarded to such firms by the county to determine whether there was a significant disparity. The study found that the Cuyahoga County spent a total of $1,114,965,288 in prime spending. That's $1.1 billion in major procurement categories during the study period, and $51,519,807 of this amount, or 4.62% of the amount, was spent with MWBE firms as prime contractors. White female-owned firms accounted for 4.03% of the total MWBE awards, while minorities were 0.59% of the awards. When I heard that figure, I was just floored. Cuyahoga County Executive Armond Budish, as a result of this, issued 4 executive orders intended to address the racial and gender disparities in county contracting. I'd like to bring Chantel Brown and Daniel Sidnor to the stage to talk about the role of the County Council, the County Citizens Advisory Council, and those 4 executive orders. Hi, ladies. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Chantel Brown is Cuyahoga County Council's representative for District 9 and is fully committed to serving the needs of our citizens. Ms. Brown previously served on the Warrensville Heights City Council for 3 years. As a member of the County Council, Ms. Brown intends to continue advocating for the needs of seniors and youth and will work toward establishing a health and human services that integrates economic development and promotes job opportunities. Chantel recently spearheaded the legislation declaring racism as a public health crisis. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Danielle Sidnor is president of the Greater Cleveland branch of the NAACP and sits on the county's Citizen Advisory Council on Equity. She is the CEO of Win-Win Strategies, a diversion and inclusion organization business. Good afternoon, ladies. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you explain to everybody what the difference between the County Council and the Advisory Council for Equity is and how they work together?
Sure, I'll start.
Yes,
Okay.
thanks. Definitely,
All
I'm not
right.
an elected official. I'll let you take that one.
Thank you. So the Cuyahoga County Council is the legislative branch of our government as it relates to being the safety net to the services that we provide to our citizens. And when I introduced the legislation to declare racism as a public health crisis, it was important to me that we include citizens to have a voice as it relates to making recommendations to address this issue. So the council, who I am very pleased to acknowledge. We got bipartisan support on this legislation. It passed unanimously, which is something to be very proud of. It's not very common that you can get both sides of the aisle to agree on this issue, and I'm grateful for my colleagues to be able to do that. But as the case relates, the council, the individuals that we recruited, we wanted them to have a voice. It's important that the people who live in the community who are being touched by this work had a seat at the table. And so when we introduced the legislation, I wanted to make sure that happened. And I'll turn it over to Danielle so she can talk a little bit more about the council itself.
Thank you. Danielle?
Yeah, so the council really is to serve as an advisory body to support the council itself on dealing with the issues that are found in the disparity study, the issues that are found within the county at large, regardless of things that are identified in the study, and really to be that advocacy voice to help push. You know, we think a lot of times that legislators are there to do a certain job, but we also realize that sometimes they need an extra push and they need another voice from outside the folks that are sitting around the table. And so our job as appointed members of that council is to really be that additional voice. But Chantel made it very clear that we were going to do some work. We were not going to be members of a council on name only, but that we were going to have to dig in and meet and connect regularly to understand the issues that we were trying to address.
Thank you. The first executive order that Armond Budish put into to existence addresses contracting. So what is different about this order, especially around contract goals and measuring good faith efforts?
So the first executive order allows us to narrowly tailor goals. Our first order of business, if I could just share a little bit of history, the original disparity study came on board in 2000, I want to say 2011 or 10, before I got on board. And we got that information that was actually beginning to grow stale. I pushed this along in 2015 when I first came on to County Council to make sure that we were continuing the process so that we could make legislation that would give us an opportunity to narrowly tailor gender as well as race-specific legislation. Had we let that legislation go stale, we would have been starting over, and it's a 5-year cycle. So if things grow stale, then you have to start over. So this is a 10-year process, a 10-year program in the making. So in 2015 is when we introduced the Community Benefits Agreement, race neutral, that spoke to that data that you talked about before you introduced us. And that race neutral initiative put us in a position now so that we have legal standing to make our contracts specifically tailored towards minorities and women, and we'll be measuring those separately and independently. So that's the main difference as it relates to this executive order. So I'm pretty proud of the work, as you can tell.
Yes, absolutely. Danielle, is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah, and I think that it's important that Chantel elevates the fact that the disparity study was necessary, because sometimes as community members and as activists, we're like, we already know disparity exists, right? But the legal process says we have to have someone study, and then there has to be a finding, and once that finding is there, it now gives the legislators the power to be able to say, you're not going to be able to accomplish this with race-neutral items. We have to have specific statutes, set-asides, different things that oftentimes people try and tell us aren't necessary. And so this type of work, be able to push it all the way to the finish line, allows us to do that.
Great, great. All right, the second executive order is about advanced posting. Please explain why this is important.
Advanced posting. Well, I think we just need to talk about the greater outreach to minorities and women-owned businesses. A lot of times, what we were finding in the studies is that the minority business community and sometimes the women-owned business community just didn't have the resources available immediately to address some of these RFQs and RFPs, which are requests for proposals and requests for quotes for people. So sometimes we talk in these, these acronyms, and it's like, what are they talking about? So we wanted to make sure that they had enough time to be able to find a seat at the table. Too often, we learn about projects and it's at the end.
Already underway.
Already underway. So we wanted to make sure that we put our contractors in a position to get the information on the front end rather than on the tail end.
You're right. That is so important. I know a lot of times as a small business owner myself, you come in and you've got like a week or 3 days to try to put something together. So
Yeah, and our businesses often have less capacity. I think as Hilton talked about earlier, the need to be able to have people inside your organization that can be ready to respond to these type of things. So the earlier our businesses get a chance to know about them, they can do the outreach necessary to have the skills at the table to respond appropriately.
That's right. That's exactly right. Okay, ladies. The third executive order is regarding increased use of small business set-aside. What is changing with this order?
Again, expanding the access specifically for minority businesses and specifically for women-owned businesses and having the legal standing to do it. Putting our contractors in a position to be able to get more than crumbs at the table. And so that was very important to me when you talked about that statistic, 0.5%, less than $10 million and $1 billion of spending really is devastating. We have opportunities to change our entire community's lives with this type of legislation because we want to make sure we are really pushing the fact that we need to get our fair share. So when you talk about over $1 billion and the Black community only gets 5 million of it, it's shameful. So this will give us an opportunity to put in goals that are reflective of the community. Aggressively, I would like to see, we represent 30% of the population. I want 30% of the pie. How about that?
I like that. I like that.
You get no arguments here.
Right. And then lastly, ladies, the fourth executive order addresses outreach and compliance with MWBE contracting program. What is the county planning to do differently?
Well, I think, and again, when we talk about that 10-year process of getting this work from where it was to where it is, we are just going to be able to make impact in the business community that will transform not only the business owners, but the landscape throughout Cuyahoga County. When we see these buildings go up, we need to make sure that we're more than being at the working level, but that our owners are becoming millionaires. And that's really what I want to see firsthand from this legislation that we've created, because we've got so much opportunity. Cleveland is so primed for change with so much available to us. And so we just got to make sure we're getting our fair share here. And so that's really, at the end of the day, that's what this whole thing is about. And I want to say one other thing before I go, is even as it relates to the 10-year cycle, The racism as a public health crisis piggybacked off of that work that started 10 years ago. The racism as a public health crisis was actually birthed from the infant mortality movement. A lot of people may not realize that, and we started that work in 2016. And the legislation, while we're focused here on construction and contracts, I think it's just important to know that racism just permeates every fabric of our life, everything that we do. And so this legislation to me was so important because we can address issues not only around contracts and construction, but around education, transportation, quality of life, access to food, and those type of things. So I'm very passionate about this issue. So I just am grateful and appreciative of the opportunity to speak a little bit and share about the importance of the work that's being done. So I want to thank you very much for the opportunity, because I know we're coming to a close, and having Danielle, she is so dynamic and she is a force on that council. And it's a real powerful thing when you have a voice at the table, when you're able to shape the future of the people that you represent. So I'm very privileged and pleased to do this work.
Well, we appreciate that. Danielle, is there anything that you would like to add in closing?
Well, I always love working with Chantel. So, when any opportunity I have to do that, it's always a privilege. But I would just add that, again, as we look at the backdrop of how this conversation started with some of our elder statesmen sharing the things that took place before some of us on this panel were born, and some of the businesses that were called out are still in operation today. So this works. We know when there's intentionality, when organizations, when government comes together, when corporate comes together and says we're going to make it a decision to intentionally support minority businesses, we can have businesses that sustain for multiple generations.
Right,
and so this work that we're talking about that's starting now, we should see 50, 100 years from now the effects of that.
It's exciting, shaping the future. And I want to thank you, ladies, for breaking down these executive orders, which will now help our audience understand the direction that the county's planning to proceed to address disparity. Now, Frank, let's get our panel discussion and have that go so we can talk about the real business of Cuyahoga County. How does it impact people?
Absolutely. I'm going to take this one. Okay. All right. Thanks so much for keeping that conversation going. And I'm going to take some time to introduce the people that are going to join me up here for this conversation. As we all know, they've got some responses that we can't wait to hear. So first up, Ted Carter. Ted Carter, Cuyahoga County Chief Economic Development and Business Officer. And Mr. Carter is responsible for maximizing economic development opportunities for citizens and businesses right here in Cuyahoga County, utilizing the Economic Development Plan to achieve goals and measure ongoing progress in collaboration with the Economic Development Commission. He has a lot of hats he wears, and for good reason. So thank you so much for joining us today, Mr. Carter. Also, Shakori Davis, business owner, Next Gen Construction. His construction company offers carpentry and labor services, general contracting services, and construction management services. By the way, Next Gen Construction currently is involved in projects at University Hospital, Cleveland Clinic, Cleveland Metro School District, Metro Health Facilities, and the City of Cleveland. He's also a board member of NAMC and VP of CAA. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Davis.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And we just heard from Danielle Sidnor. We know she is president of Cleveland Chapter NAACP, and that is the nation's oldest, largest, and most widely recognized grassroots-based civil rights organization. Danielle is also CEO of We Win Strategies. That is a firm dedicated to working with a diverse array of stakeholders to create win-win outcomes for individuals, organizations, and communities. She just spoke about that. And she has been a recurring presence on News 5 at 5 o'clock, talking about many of these issues. So thank you so much for that, Danielle. And Arian Kirkpatrick, president of the AKA team, a construction company that specializes in construction management, commercial cleaning, and waterproofing services. Currently, the projects include Cuyahoga Community College, 9th Street Pier, Lakewood City Schools, Cleveland Clinic, and Warrensville City Schools. So thanks to all of you for joining me today on this panel. I was trying to be smooth about lowering my seat. I don't know if there's an easy way to do that. Nonetheless, we'll get this conversation started. And we'll let you kick this off, Danielle, because you just kind of expounded on some of the problems and some of the solutions. It's difficult to encapsulate everything from a historical standpoint, but as we are talking about this set of executive orders, how did we get here? When we look at the numbers and we see such a small percentage of us taking advantage of such great opportunities, and it's not our own fault.
Yeah, well, Frank, I think that systems themselves are one of the biggest barriers, and oftentimes we are fighting against the things that look like symptoms to problems as opposed to the root issues. And so I think that we're in a much different climate today than we have been in a very long time. So the fact that we have a county that's declared racism as a public health crisis, we have a city that's declared racism as a public health crisis, we have uprisings all across the country, people are listening to us, they're paying more attention, and they're willing to kind of look at the fact that we did not get here by accident, that there have been many systems in place for a number of years that have created the conditions that we're really dealing with today. And so the executive orders are a beginning step to address some of those issues, but groups and organizations and talks like this, making sure the community is aware of now what's at their fingertips, is that what I think is the most important part, because the stroke of a pen just to put something in place, but we have to do the work to activate it.
And Ted, how do we get it to go beyond conversation? Because that's what Danielle was alluding to. Now that we have the conversation going, we have to take that ball and run with it.
No question. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thrilled to be here. Let me say hello to Councilwoman Chantel Brown. She was really the driver of this, taking advantage of the moment along with the county executive. So the next steps, and I just came, Councilwoman Brown, from adopting our equity report, and so you have additional commitments that go beyond the executive order to really put teeth into the executive order. The executive order is really a signal by the executive that forecasting additional staffing resources that are needed to do outreach, and that is the key to this. So it seems so basic, but the government being intentional and having the resources to create networks and connectivity to businesses, minority businesses with intentionality is important. But also, you all are busy running a business, you got to make the time. And so I speak as someone who oversaw a very successful procurement program in the federal government, one of the best in the federal government at the Treasury Department. So we had a whole apparatus to outreach and engage. And so it's just about networking. And Mr. Smith really gave a lot of good advice. Know your customer. So you got to know the business that you're supporting and write your proposal to the outcomes and objectives that are outlined in the RFP. But it starts with relationships. And so the relationship won't win you the business, but it'll certainly help. And you've got no better example than Ariane, the success she's had recently, winning a major contract with the county to do our COVID conversion internally. It's fantastic. I read her proposal because I was on the scoring committee. There's another difference of what the county is doing. Prior to a year ago, I'm responsible for economic development, which has a nexus with procurement, but I don't do procurement. Say, hey, we need to diversify our procurement evaluators. Outstanding proposal, and she outscored major companies in this market. Just the way she wrote the proposal, talked about her past performance and experience, phenomenal. And so the result is she's won, and they're the envy. They're looking, how the hell did she do that? And it just, and that wasn't overnight, right? That was day after day, year after year of building relationship, expertise, capacity. And then Shaq is another one who's part of that contract. So you got two examples. They should just open up a consulting business with you all, along with Danielle, of course. Let me not, and just, because follow their lead. They're successful in a complex, competitive environment. Couldn't be prouder.
That's a lot to unpack and great information there, and for good reason. When you talk about relationships, if we don't have the relationship, clearly we don't have a foundation. And Ariane and Shaq, I'd like for you all to speak to this. Because there was so much said and it was all needed, that can be a bit exhausting, can it not? All the steps that we must take to make this happen, this being those opportunities. Ariane, could you speak to that? How can we replenish that energy and not lose that drive?
But first of all, I think it's important to make sure that we have organizations like NAMC so that we can help facilitate. It's important, Shaq and I, we think a lot alike, for us not to be the only ones. We want to share in our advocacy and helping other contractors uplift. Worked real hard to get here, and it's not been an easy journey. Unfortunately, we have to have things like the disparity study. I was talking to a young lady the other day, and she said, "Oh, everything's just so perfect, and you're doing well, and life is just so easy. I'm so proud of you." I'm like, "Girl,
Wait, what?
what are you talking about?" I said, "Let me," and I broke down and I looked at and talked to her about the disparity study, because it's just so interesting. Again, when you see that $1 billion were spent in Cuyahoga County, and 4.8% or 4.7, it didn't make sense anyway, 4 point something went to minorities and female-owned companies. But then you flip the page and you dig deeper and you found that only 0.59% of that were minorities, not even 1%. There's always a spend for 15%. But what always happens is you think that everybody wants to just do right. Everybody wants to make money. And so the concerns for diversity and inclusion just go away. So you have to have a disparity study. You have to spend money to prove that there's discrimination in contracting for contractors. It's a shame. It's not the county's fault. I can't even pinpoint. It's just systemic over and over. So what we have to do are overcome those obstacles. Organizations like NAMC make it happen. We had organizations like Minority Business Solutions, APB, organizations that look and monitor diversity and inclusion. We have to make sure that owners care. Thank goodness Cuyahoga County cared. I mean, the first time they did the contract, to be honest with you, when we talked about no contractors, we really sort of didn't bid. We were scared to go up and we're like, we're not going to win. Because we go to so many outreach where they just show our face and we see we're on a website or we're on somebody's photo op, and we're like, we're not going to win. And we realized with this that we could win. And I'm so glad you mentioned my presentation, because I worked hard on it. And especially as a female black woman, I get it from all kinds, brothers, sisters, white, black. She ain't real. I'm the real deal. I'm the real deal. And I did score number one out of all those contractors, the second time from white and black contractors.
Clap it up for that,
Let's
yes.
go.
And Shaq, what do you make of that as we talk about finding the fortitude to endure these situations? Because as much as we know that we must endure, that's sometimes easier said than done.
I agree. I hope that everyone really had an opportunity to listen to Hilton. I'm a student. I'm always a student. And I think Hilton kind of hit the nail on the coffin when he spoke about it's a daily fight. You know, you have to, if whatever business it is, and especially in construction, because there are so many moving parts, you have to live, sleep, breathe construction. I mean, this is what we do, especially if we're going to talk about equity. Everybody who knows me, I'm all about the money. I love being rewarded for the hard work that we put in. And as a small business owner, it's always a challenge because they see you. So when we're talking about equity and we're talking about building wealth and things of that sort, it's not like, he spoke of Turner. Well, I've never met Mr. Turner, but as a small business owner, they see in you. So you actually have to, you have to be the best. You have to want to be the best. Everybody, I'm an estimator, so I'm that part of the team. I'm over contracting also for NAMC. I'm over the contracting piece, and I like to work on the nuts and bolts because I think that's what's really gonna carry any new contractor into the next level. That's why it's called level up, because as Danielle said, the opportunities are out there. People spent money on reports and studies and things of that sort. We have some more advocates out here in the crowd who's also spending with Metro Health, spending money on reports and things of that sort. So now it's our time, and that's one of the reasons NAMC is in place right now, so that, contractors can come to us and we can show them how it's been done from a small business standpoint. So I'm excited.
Absolutely, as you should be. And as we speak to the nuts and bolts, the tools, if you will, that helped you get to this point, I think something that many people may ask is they want to get something off the ground. How do I get started? What are those basic tools, those nuts and bolts that I need to have in my toolbox to get to where Shaq is?
Oh, that's a good question. Everybody know I like talking, but that's a good question. So I graduated from East Technical High School, which is the city of Cleveland here. And unfortunately for me, I know a lot of my East Tech classmates would, probably be upset with me, but there wasn't a lot of us to help me get through the door, right? So it goes back to what Hilton spoke of, it has to become who you are. You have to be better. It's almost like an athlete, how you have to warm up and get ready for the game and things of that sort. You got to get excited about it. You got to motivate yourself, talk to yourself, all those different variables. And most importantly, you have to be able to endure. You have to be able to learn. You have to be able to ask. I think that's a big problem that we have. A great example is one of the things that we really want to work on is helping non-union companies. You have so many, most of the small business owners are independent contractors. Well, it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be a 1,000 sole proprietors. How do we, get you guys to work together? How do we start forming help forming companies that can put their resources together, and it should be companies like organizations like NAMC that help them construct that, or even put them into the right direction. So.
And Danielle, I saw you nodding in agreement there. When we were talking about the numbers with the executive order and all of that supports us getting to this point, do you think it's so much as the numbers are startling to you as much as it is you need those numbers to scare other people into action?
Yes, definitely the latter. We need the numbers to scare folks into action because we live this stuff every single day, right? We've been beating our head on the wall saying like, nah, for real, you're not really awarding enough opportunities. And to Arian's point, the number of photo ops and the number of times that we're graced on websites or mentioned in annual reports and things like that, but it's like the dollars don't flow the same way the pictures do. And so what we're essentially saying when the numbers come out and they're so staggering, you can't refute that. Right? So now it's no more anecdotal. We're not trying to convince you. There is data that proves it. And so I think to the points that Shaq and Arian have both made, we do have to work to create more enterprises. And that's something that's on us. And so when we have organizations like NAMC, we as a community have to support them as well, which is why I'm so excited to participate in this event, because hopefully we all start to share with our networks more organizations that are trying to help us level up and get to the place where we can be competitive, and so we can demand the whole pie. And I think that, again, Hilton talked about learn before you earn. So there's a two-part process. We have to fight and advocate, but we have to have businesses that are ready to participate after the advocacy is finished.
Now, Ted, what do you make of that?
I never disagree with Danielle.
That's a good start right there.
We've worked together a lot the last year. But she said something that's critical. And I, at different times in my career, have been a consultant. So I said it earlier, you got a lot of demands on your time. You got to earn revenue, you got to market, you got to execute. But give money to this, and you're giving your time, but make sure you pay your dues or whatever it is, because this is a leverage point for you. And so you're leveraging the voice and the power and the relationships that they represent, and then the efficiency of information that you'll receive. And so Danielle's spot on. And then execute. I can't emphasize, and Hilton talked about this, executing the work. The playing field is now being leveled because of these disparity studies, and even under, Ariane might argue it was unleveled, it wasn't completely level for her, and she still won, but you still got to execute. It's a competitive industry. It's driven by cost. Another element that Danielle talked about in terms of building enterprises, we talk about this all the time, capacity. We're making the argument along with Councilwoman Brown, but then you're looking around, where are the firms? So we got to get people into this industry, not only as business owners, but people who know how to execute in the different trades. So that's a weakness that we got to shore up. So I've been in this role 5 years as a Chief Economic Development Officer. So I'm more on the development side of projects like Sherwin-Williams, the Beacon downtown. I have come across one African-American developer in those 5 years that has proactively come into my office and said, hey, I want to avail myself of the county programs. So partly on me, but it's, you know, I'm on the website, but why is that? And so we got to develop capacity, because that is the beginning of the pipeline for you all and construction, right? Minority developers are going to hire minority contractors, and so we got to build that capacity. And so that's a more sophisticated, it takes capital, but anyway, I'll stop there.
I think agreeing with Danielle is always a great start, right? That gets you out to a strong start. You know, Ariane, to hear you speak passionately about the opportunities that you've been able to take advantage of is very refreshing, because in many of the interviews I've conducted across Northeast Ohio, I've heard many ladies say they wanted to be more outspoken about what they've contributed. Could you speak a little bit more about being so unapologetic about your contributions, because that is necessary, not only because you need to highlight what you've done, but also because there are people who are coming behind you that need to know that it's okay and that you've been able to overcome. Can you speak to that a bit?
I can. I am unapologetically a proud Black woman. It's who I am. It's the makeup of who I am. But when I first started my business, I did not put the acronyms that we have, MBE, FBE, on my card, because I had done construction for 25 years. I didn't do it with my husband. I didn't do it with my boyfriend. I didn't do this to do it. I knew construction.
That's you.
That's me. And so I said, well, I'm not going to do it. But then I realized, why not? It's my asset of being a Black woman is rare in this business. And what can I do to make sure that I uplift and pull other Black women, other Black folks, Black and brown folks into this unapologetically, I don't want you in it industry. So needed to figure out ways to make that change. But then I really wanted to concentrate on building the infrastructure of the AK-18. And it's interesting because, and I know you asked something else, but it made me think, right when COVID started and we were doing the COVID modifications, right before the COVID modifications, and we had to think about pivoting and what to do to your company. You know, when I first started, a lot of folks, oh, she has too much staff, she's gonna go bankrupt, she has too much payroll, and it was just talked about. But I was prepared. And something else that we did real unique is we worked with Tucker Ellis to build our COVID modifications. So when I was able to do that COVID RFP, I had some experience in it. We hired someone specifically to do COVID across all of AK-18. And as we were doing RFPs and partnering with other companies, they were shocked. I mean, I think we have, a 15-page document on how to handle it. Know your business. The other thing is Hilton Smith, and I'm going to tell this. I really actually thought that Turner Construction was a Black-owned company because I thought he owned it. I was sitting, when I got in this room with construction, and I was sitting in there, and this man did a presentation, and he showed a white man on the screen. And I was like, what? Where is Hilton? but so he taught me to make sure I'm out there showing others. He taught me to make sure I had my accountant, make sure I have my attorney, make sure you have those tools to grow. You're Black, and we have to fight that obstacle, but you have to be good at what you do. I'm good. That's it.
And I think that brings it full circle. I'm so glad you are so willing to say that, because it needs to be heard.
I didn't used to. I was shy with.
Had to morph into that.
Yeah, you had to morph in.
That's all right. We're glad you're here now. And Shaq, when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we often hear them all mentioned together, and for good reason, right? We don't want just a diverse picture because the people in the picture may not be actually included in the efforts going forward. Can you speak about the importance of that?
I think it's extremely important. I think it's something that I struggle with initially, and as a diverse contractor, and me and Arian talked about this a couple weeks ago, and no offense, to anyone, but I don't think that I hired anybody who didn't look like me for the first, until maybe 2 years ago. And in the construction industry, that's kind of unheard of, but I was a tradesman coming up, and I was most of the time the only black. I was an estimator and project manager for a company, and most of the time I was the only black. So I had it in my head that I was going to make sure that even my office is 75% City of Cleveland, CMSD grads. So I've always had a commitment to make sure that my team, struggling and all, because it's not easy, taking that approach, but it's needed. And I think that's one of the things that NAMC is going to, I think that's one of the things that we really want to focus on, trusting each other, trusting people who look like you, trusting knowing how to work with other African Americans, whether it's in the union, whether it's non-union, whether it's as employees, whether it's as foremen, superintendents, whatever it may be. It's okay to work with people who look like you. So, and on top of it, and you can still make money and reap all of the awards, and you set those same requirements. Excellence.
I guess, and no greater backdrop than that to find out that clearly we are not a monolith. We don't all think the same, right?
Very true.
I just wanted to add something that he said when speaking of workforce. That's what's important, because that's what's going to come and be business owners after us. Chuck and I are real big about making sure we have an inclusive workforce, and we did talk about this. I had 90% of workforce, he had 90%, and when I interviewed all the other black entrepreneur contractors, they had that also. But what we learned is there's not a lot of black, brown tradesmen in the union. So we're all pulling, and especially the majority-owned companies, because we have the participation in the workforce requirements. We are both proud. I'm proud to say that 82% of my staff is minority. That's in construction management and trades, and over $10 million went to Cuyahoga County employees that I have attributed to payroll. But we have to make sure that we get our folks included in the trades, that we get them included whether they're in the union or not in the union. Many times we ask the unions, what's your percentage? What's your percentage of minorities? We're not asking because we want to put you down. We want to help uplift you. We want to help uplift so that it's a diverse workforce that can also become entrepreneurs. We want to make sure that we get more black contractors signatory in the union. Many of them say, I'm not getting in. They don't want me in. Yeah, they gonna want you in. We're going to make sure of that, and we're fighting the battle every day to make sure that we're included in that participation. We do programs with internships. We're working with Crew. I believe Chris told you all about our programs, but it's important to make sure that we uplift our youth to get them in this career. Because if it's 0.59% of us just making contracts, just think of the numbers of how many trades folks we have.
No doubt, no doubt. And I think time is not on our side, but I want to ask you all a two-part question to kind of wrap this up for us. And we've kind of alluded to this the entire conversation. And Shaq, I'll start with you. Once this infrastructure is built, how do we maintain it? I know that Ariane kind of touched upon that as we mentioned the youth and her closing thoughts there. And then, of course, anything you'd like to add that perhaps we did not ask.
Well, I think that the best way to maintain it is to continue to focus on the future. I know history is always core, but I love to focus on what's coming ahead. What's in place. How can we capitalize and take advantage of all the opportunities that are out there today? I think we have enough people focused on some of the other aspects, whether it's things that we still need to overcome today. So I just like to, I would tell most of our most people who want to become contractors to just focus on, what's coming ahead and don't necessarily get stuck into some of the debates. I mean, we have enough people focused on that. So
I like that. Move out of the debate room.
Move out of the debate room and let's start getting action. Let's start implementing. Thank you. Now you got me going. Okay, let's start rolling. Let's start putting plans in place. Let's start taking advantage of all the hard work that Danielle and Chantel and so many other people are laying the foundation for. Let's start building.
Absolutely. Ariane, final thoughts on that. How do we keep this going once we've got the infrastructure built? And any final thoughts?
Don't turn down a job. The first phase for the county, many of us did not apply for it. Apply for the job. Put in the RFP. Complete a pre-qualification. I know the paperwork is so hard, but when you complete that pre-qualification, you look at the guidelines of what's going to help you grow. You're going to learn about your EMR rating and your OSHA, and you're going to learn about risk management. Do not be afraid. It can happen. Apply for the jobs. You can do it. And NAMC is here to help you make sure you do it.
Be not afraid, right? And Ted, your final thoughts on this whole matter as you bring this home for us. And once everything is in place, how do we make sure we keep it there?
I think it's already been said. On an individual level, don't be afraid. Focus, know your customer, build relationships. And I come out of the commercial real estate industry. That is a pipeline, an early warning system of opportunity. Those brokers will know what's in the market, particularly around new development. So having those relationships so that you get a 18-month, 2-year horizon on projects that are coming down the pipeline. And we're going to do a better job. That's reflected in our equity report, which will be released on Monday, of having more transparency around what the county. So I can tell you off the bat, and this is public information, so I'm not, we're going to build a jail someplace. You saw that earlier this week. A diversion center, a new justice center will be coming online. So these are huge projects that just be aware of and build those relationships and position yourself with. So she gave an example of COVID. Who knew COVID? So that was prescient. But there's other things. COVID or variant of is here to stay. Get that expertise so that you stand out.
Absolutely. So for Ted, Shaq, Danielle, and Ariane, we thank you so much for listening to this conversation. And at this point, I want to turn it back over to Chris House.
All right, thank you so much, Frank. Truly appreciate it. Well, our program is coming to a close, and we want to thank you for attending this launch, NAMC, Northern Ohio Chapter's Level Up program, and I want you to remember that it will be featured monthly, the third Thursday of every month. So we want to invite you back. Please contact us if you have any questions. Secondly, I'd like to thank our sponsors. It's the Cleveland Cavaliers and Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse for hosting our event. I would be reminiscent without thanking our esteemed panelists. I would like to thank Hilton Smith, Kevin Clayton for the really inspiring fireside chat. And I want to thank all the board members for coming in and really supporting us. And then I want to thank you for spending the time with us. One of the things I really want to tell you is that this is not a sprint. It's a marathon, and the panelists have actually told you that, and we want you to understand that all of this work, it takes commitment, perseverance, and a willingness to serve. We want to encourage you to join NAMC Northern Ohio chapter, because doing that will not only change your life, but assist you in changing and making a difference in your legacy and all generations to come. So I want to please follow us on social media, and so that you understand all of our programs, all of the exciting events that we have coming up. And please have a good day and be blessed and be great. Thank you.